¿Listos? ¡Acción!
Ready?
Are you ready? Are you ready?
My name is Noala Riddle Morales, and I'm one of the founders of Carnaval del Pueblo, the Latin American carnival organization. Carnaval del Pueblo is an organization which traditionally, since 1998, delivers the largest Latin American carnival in London, which comprises of a procession leading from the Latin Quarter, Elephant and Castle, or sometimes from City Hall, down to Burgess Park, where it kickstarts the largest Latin American carnival. Carnaval de Pueblo is traditionally revealing the cultural heritage of a cross-section of the 19 Latin American countries. It was very much a Colombian event back in 1998, 99, and by 2000 it was revealing the cultural heritage also of Ecuador and more recently of Bolivia, Peru, Mexico, and by its largest event, 2010, it was probably about 90% of the Latin American countries that were represented at grassroots level. The Latin American community arriving in London is an intriguing story, and we can trace the very first musicians, for example, way back to the turn of the century, the 1800s, but looking at how things are today and how Elephant and Castle became the focal point of the Latin American community is interesting too. And hearsay has it that some hairdressers were employed initially from the Colombian community by hairdressers which I think were run by Jamaican people, and this attracted more and more of the extended family. And interestingly now, at practically any part of Colombia, for example, people have heard of Elephant and Castle, and it's very much the aim to make it to Elephant and Castle when people hit the UK, because they know that all the needs for a recently arrived person will be there, the food, the culture, advice on how to get employment. Everything that's needed can be found for a Latin American recently arrived person in London. The Carnaval de Pueblo Heritage Project is very much inspired by the range of international artists which we've been able to present in Carnaval de Pueblo, and working back from that, wondering what's the history, how did this become a focal point for global artists. And so we're working back through this project and saying, so Carnaval de Pueblo has presented, for example, icon figures such as Willie Colon, Henry Fiol, from Fania years, Santiago Adi Alberto. Iconic figures, as I say, yeah, Lisandro Mesa, Oscar de Leon, and of course Grupo Nietzsche. So what we're exploring is, why was Carnaval de Pueblo a really important place for such important artists to perform at? I think that's what the inspiration has been.
Europa y el mundo se contagian de toda esta cultura de nuestra raza. En Londres se quedaron asombrados al ver nuestros artistas danzando, vacilados.
The journey for this project has been lengthy and fascinating, and we were interested at the very early stages of this phenomenon hitting London, the Latin American cultural heritage and music. So our first port of call was the British Museum, and that was extraordinary to see the exhibition of Colombian gold and the pre-Columbian period, and how that, as food, dance, music, everything was illustrated there. And from the British Museum and the stories that we learnt there, this took us on to looking at the Royal Academy of Music's museum and the Royal College of Music museum. And so we could see the connections coming into London at the turn of the century, from way to the very south of Latin America, South America, from Argentina and tango. It also took us right up to the modern period at the O2, where we saw the history of music in the exhibition there. And we could see the influences right through to Roxy music. Similar rhythms that we'd seen way back in the British Museum when we were looking at the history of gold and all the cultural connections with that. When a group of us visited the Horniman Museum in Forest Hill, it was intriguing because at face value it was going to be a straightforward visit, and then it was just really exciting to find early instruments from artists from Bolivia and Argentina and all sorts of different countries behind the cases there, and we really didn't expect that. So that was an added bonus, and it built on a lot of the discoveries that we made when we had our event in the Coronet in Elephant and Castle in the Coronet Theatre, and that was our inauguration and an opportunity for members of the community to come and talk about their feelings and passions for the Latin American music and how it was an integral part of their lives.
We do cumbia. Cumbia is from the Caribbean Sea.
Yeah.
Actually, the cumbia started in Cartagena. It's a fusion between drums and floats, and they start to dance for the African people. We do just to remember the heritage from the African people.
So what really hit us was, perhaps more so than in the UK, the music for everyone every day is as equally important as food, work, family. It's an integral part of life, which perhaps we don't see so much in the UK. The Heritage Project, which is our second Heritage Project, has been really beautiful this time round, in that we've embraced a real cross-section of people in its delivery. So we've had, for example, a number of students from UCL who have come to Carnaval de Pueblo and worked with us on the project, and they've been able to make friends with a number of Latin American people who've been involved in it as well. I'd say the team is up to 15 to 20 over time. And on the outings, we've been able to involve most people, to the museums and so on. And we've also been able to involve very well-known musicians. For example, Roberto Pla has given us a beautiful interview mid-play. So it's really brought together a lot of people simply by the interest and passion of finding out about this music in London. So the students, for example, were able to explore a topic they were interested in Spanish, and they were also able to capture the experiences on film, photos, and also the opportunity to actually hear and listen to the music and talk about the music with people who live it on a daily basis. I think the earliest traces of Latin American influences in London, after we go past the period of Simón Bolívar and Francisco de Miranda and the great champions of independence of Latin America and their period in London, it moves on very much to the Argentinian tango, which we can trace that way back to very early 1900s, if not before. And then this gradually moves into the influences from people leaving Chile and their folk music, and then of course cumbia and salsa and vallenato from the coastal regions of Latin America and Colombia. And I think more recently we've been exploring and enjoying very much cumbia and vallenato. Through the museums and speaking with musicians that are in London at the moment, we've seen a wide variety of pipes. We've seen an extraordinary variety of drums. We've seen the different guitars from the cuatro, charango, whatever. And it's built on the history that we have here in London of the very early people who brought the accordion and vallenato here. And more recently with the Niños Vallenato, who came in 2013, and an extraordinary group of young people whose lives are based around the accordion and who have gone right through to the honour of playing for President Clinton and up throughout Europe, the Honor Museum, exploring all that heritage. And again, they were the people who were able to explain back in Colombia how the accordion arrived in Colombia and Latin America from Europe. So this project started off as a small journey around Elephant and Castle in London and has extended right over to the coastal areas of Colombia. When we did our major event in the Coronet, we displayed and shared and enjoyed and experimented with a wide variety of Latin American music, from Paraíso School of Samba right through to all the music of the Andes, leading on to the great salsa name of David Pavón, and of course exploring the vallenato music with José Arias, who's very well known in London and the UK as the leader in that music. And I think what struck a chord with so many people involved in the project was finding the connections with the wider UK, what goes on in London and where that came from. So through the accordion, we could immediately make the connections of Celtic, Irish and Scottish music. And that took us right up to conversing with Miss Hunt at the Accordion Museum in the very north of Scotland. And I think that's what's been intriguing for everybody involved, the people who have been students from UCL, from different parts of Europe, Belgium, Holland, congregated here in London, and Colombians and people from Ecuador and so on, and Scottish, Irish, English, British people. And it's just finding these connections and suddenly everyone going, we can identify with this. So we're listening to vallenato music and it's the accordion, but Celtic people can be identifying, and people from Eastern Europe and so on. So it's just the joy of this has been finding the connections and finding just in fact how much everyone has in common, and the whole musical heritage of the world is one big circle.